expensive people wandering around, like, playing with a bunch of hugely expensive equipment. So, like, first of all, like, to me, the domain hasn't shifted. I've always been questioning whether in any domain this is a good idea. And obviously it's an empirical question, because all questions are empirical questions ultimately, right? Like, the value question would be a completely different issue, which is, do I, as a creator, have a right to appropriate my own work? Is it morally wrong for you to take what I have created unless I authorize you to do it? And that's a completely separate question. Sure. I just think as the empirics, even in markets with very low to zero marginal cost, we do not know of markets that have successfully managed to get along without finding some way to pay creators for the benefits of creating the works. I mean, like, the markets we do know where people don't get paid are on the level of the cottage production of home music. And while I love campfire sing-alongs, you know, I'm not sure that this is, like, actually, like, that if we all were reduced back to the level of singing and dancing along for ourselves at home, that would actually represent a huge increase in consumer surplus, because we could all do it for free.
Well, I mean, it seems like, so demonstrably in the case of, let's say, software browsers, the free and open source alternative is, I think, at the very least, equal in quality to the commercial competitors.
But also heavily funded by hardware and software companies that have, like, very specific goals to strategically undermine their competitors.
Well, be that as it may.
Software companies, I might mention, and hardware companies that make their money by copyrighting and patenting the works that they sell.
But the argument here does not require that there, like, be no funding whatever for creative production. The point is just that, let's say, in the specific domain of music, you have to look at the costs of input. That is not just the technological costs of production and distribution and marketing, which are, you know, quite high, or were once quite high and maybe dropping. Also the costs of using creative works as inputs to new production, and then say, well, okay, given that particular set of economics, given the incentives of, you know, at that cost, how many people are willing to do it when perhaps they can't get paid that well, but they get respect or social recompense of some kind, or just the intrinsic pleasure of it. And given that particular set of economics, are we on net better off if everyone, you know, essentially is able to enjoy these goods, without paying the kind of prices we're accustomed to? And, you know, I agree, and I think we all agree, right, that the answer might be that. So look, put it this way: it seems to be that you're saying that it's very clear to you that whatever the net effect is, positive or negative, either way, it's really clear that it would be disastrously bad for pharmaceuticals, probably pretty bad at the current stage of technology for movies, and, you know, maybe kind of bad in music, you think. But the point is that you clearly concede that it's clearly the economics in these domains are different, and even if we think it would be net bad, it would be less obviously net bad for music. And so I'm just saying, I mean, this just shows you can't just say, well, property is good, and if you don't have property, you know, hell, you know, arises. That in markets where you know, sort of the production of something for some mix of incentives of compensation and pleasure, then creates sort of these enormous benefits when it can be distributed freely, and so you kind of need to look case by case. And so, you know, I'm willing to be convinced that in the case of music at present, the net effect is not positive. But I mean, maybe, let's see. But also, you know, you kind of have to look and see, I think. That's all. And you know, it might be that the answer is different for music, or will become different for music than for movies.
Look, I'm a radical skeptic about everything, so you will never get me to say that there is a 100% chance that, I mean, maybe in the case of rent control, I will concede that there is a 100% chance that rent control screws everything up. But, like, generally, you know, might it be a net improvement? It might. It's possible. I'm very skeptical that it will, because I don't know of any other market where that has ever been the case. We're failing to compensate producers for what they produce, and recordings are something that people produce, has ended up being a net positive for the economics of creation. We're siphoning huge, probably, I mean, the majority of the revenue out of the industry somehow results in an industry that is better at fulfilling consumer needs. In general, like, we have over centuries, millennia, moved towards making things more appropriable, towards enclosing more things, giving people stronger property rights. And the reason that we've done that is that on net, with caveats and exceptions and adjustments to make the rules, to ease the friction of those rules, but on net, those rules have increased human freedom, they have increased human output, and they have increased human welfare. And so I'm always going to err on the side of presuming that, stronger property rights for people who produce, welfare-enhancing things is probably going to produce more welfare. And so, I'm always going to be skeptical of the argument that sort of eroding those rights is likely to improve things. In some cases, it is welfare enhancing, so I'm not going to say it's not possible. I just find it unlikely.
I'm curious to see what the market will look like when the preferences by which consumer welfare is defined are no longer conditioned by an industry-centered culture of creation. It might not turn out better, but it seems like it's the direction we're going come hell or high water. So I hope my optimism is justified, because I don't know how we avoid the apocalypse if you're right.